Welcome to the latest episode of the Teaming Up podcast. Today, we're joined by Lydia Mansel, a freelance travel journalist who has written for the likes of Travel and Leisure, Condé Nast Traveler, Southern Living, and many more. She teams up with Erin Bagnell to talk about travel and tourism communications. Be sure to subscribe to Teaming Up so you never miss a future episode. Now, ladies, take it away.
Lydia, thank you so much for being here. We're so excited to finally have you in Richmond. For our listeners, Lydia was going to join us on a national media panel a couple of months ago and got stuck in Denver with some flight drama, which is, I'm sure, just part of your travel writer life, right?
Unfortunately, I feel like the past year and a half, I've had way more flight issues, baggage issues than I have before. But so far, so good. Relatively lucky, minus that one trip.
Good. Well, if you don't mind, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I am a Charlottesville, Virginia-based journalist. I have been in the world of travel in some form for about 8-ish years, but I've been in content and the digital space since I graduated college and even before that. So went to William & Mary, graduated in 2014, and during that time was when I started to realize that I love to write and, was kind of good at it. And I was able to, I really focused on getting as many bylines out there as possible. And back then was writing for free, and I knew that was part of the game. But I just needed to get my foot in the door. And so from there, I moved to New York after college and started working for a website. And that's when I really...
was this Elite Daily?
Yes.
Okay.
So, which is... Elite Daily is still a thing now.
Yeah.
It was completely different 10 plus years ago.
Okay.
And so when I joined, it was before the Facebook algorithm change. It was actually like 5 months before that. And I don't know if you remember, but that was, I joined when every single ounce of traffic basically to websites was coming from Facebook, because the manner in which we were all engaging with content, we would post it on Facebook and click through on Facebook and share on Facebook, which is not as much a thing anymore. And so that was, the website was taking off, and it was so exciting, and I was so young, but it was such a fun time. In January 2015, the Facebook algorithm changed, which meant that traffic was not as powerful as it used to be.
Okay.
And so that was my first kind of taste of how insane the media landscape is and how much it changes.
Wow.
And the stress that can come along with that. But it was still a wonderful job. I was there for about 2.5 years and went from being a copy editor, which was the perfect first job I could have ever asked for. I had 2 amazing bosses, Claudia and Elizabeth. They hired me there, and they really drilled into my head the importance of clean copy, of grammar, because I realized that I had never been actually taught proper grammar and writing and punctuation, which is crazy to think about, but they taught me so much, and that has been the
kudos
backbone.
to the mentors. What a nice thing to be able to say, right? In a first job.
Yeah, it was incredible. And that really created such a solid foundation for the rest of my work.
Yeah.
And so I left there in 2016 because at that point I realized that my skill set, it was great that I could edit and write, but I needed more if I wanted to be competitive within the industry. So I went in-house to a fashion brand to work for Reese Witherspoon's company, Draper James.
Yeah.
Southern, but based in New York.
Okay.
And it was really helpful. I think, part of the reason I got the job was because I'm from Virginia. I was there for about 1.5 years, and I was doing social media and also copywriting for the brand. So writing some email copy, site copy, writing for their blog.
Right.
Really was my first introduction to the business side of companies, which I think that's helped me approach any job I've had from kind of a holistic mindset. Like, it's not just about the work that I'm doing, the writing I'm doing, but there's always a monetary goal at play, which is, I think, is an important way to approach a job, because that kind of helps you not focus so much on the emotional side, especially in the creative industry. We're all like, if I wrote copy that didn't perform, it's important to think about that, like, from
it's not personal.
Right.
It's,
Totally.
yeah.
Which can be difficult sometimes.
Sure.
But was there for, I don't know if it was about 2 years. And then I realized that I wasn't happy, and it wasn't because of the job. It was because of New York. And so I decided to move to Charleston, South Carolina. I got a job at Garden & Gun magazine doing social media. And at the time, I had been doing social for about 2 years, and I never loved it.
Yeah.
I look back and I know I was not the best at the job. I think as social media became more about visuals and
it's
video.
a grind.
Yeah. I was online 24/7,
Yeah,
which is miserable.
right.
But I moved to Garden & Gun, or moved Charleston through Garden & Gun, which was a great job. Again, just kind of introduced me, like Draper James did, or it reintroduced me rather, to the world of the South.
Yeah.
And stories that can be told here, and stories that I personally connect with. And so I'm very grateful for that, because, moving, I'm from a small town in Virginia, Bedford, between Bedford and Roanoke.
Right. You're a Bedford girl.
So super, super small. And moving to college and then to New York, I had gotten away from those Southern roots.
Yeah.
I saw it as, that's my hometown. I'm not like that. But then Draper James and Garden & Gun definitely helped me remember how special it is. And
we
that,
sucked you back
yeah,
down.
it's such an important part of who I am. My mom is from North Carolina, and it's been a massive part of how I've grown up.
Yeah.
And so it was nice to feel reconnected
Well,
there.
and you've been an ambassador. You've written lovely things about the area, and it's always so fun to see.
It's fun. I think that's been one of my favorite things about travel writing is getting to tell those stories and visit those places, and having editors associate me with the South, whether it's Virginia or North Carolina, which is where I was actually born. So that's been wonderful.
Well, so in all of those positions, it sounds like would have kind of been the perfect background for where you are now, because you understand the content landscape.
I definitely look back, and so many of the jobs I hated, was miserable, like doing social media. I was working, I never had a day off till I was furloughed in March 2020 when COVID hit. And I remember the day after I was furloughed, which was awful and devastating. I was so worried. I slept for like 12 hours, and I was like, oh my God, I haven't not set an alarm in years, because I would have to wake up and post on Instagram.
Oh, goodness gracious.
So that was just such a blessing in disguise. But they definitely did. From Millie Daily, I still have connections there, and so many of them have been hugely helpful in the travel writing space. And so many I'm still in contact with. Some are fellow writers and editors, which is incredible. Draper James, again, it reintroduced me to the South. And then after I was furloughed in March 2020, just kind of confusing, because I had moved to Charleston, worked for Garden & Gun, and then I went back to Draper James. Yeah. So I went remote work in December 2018. Okay. Draper James asked me to come back and work remotely, which was amazing for the time. I look back and I'm like, that was my first intro to a non-office life, and I loved it. So then I can do this. So then I was back working with them for about a year and a half until COVID hit. Yeah. And at that time, I had been looking and interviewing for different jobs as well. But then COVID forced me to think outside of the box and not necessarily about travel, because no one was traveling.
Yeah, right.
So I started working in B2B content. Okay. Which sounds super boring, and it kind of was, but it introduced me to another kind of content and content space that it challenged me. I was writing ebooks and white papers and case studies and things I had never written before, but super grateful. It was a very, drop in the bucket job. I was there for about a year until my latest and last full-time job at Big Human, which is a digital product studio based in New York. Okay. And so I started working for them the summer of 2021, and I had left Charleston, went abroad for a bit, and I worked for them for about 3.5, 4 years. Okay. And during that time, because there was such a great work-life balance at that job, which was incredible, I look back on, I'm very grateful for that. I was able to do more travel writing. Yeah. And while I was abroad, I was in Bath in the UK and London for a bit. Right. And was just writing as much as I could. And that sort of, it got in my system, and I wanted to do more and more. And I was realizing the opportunities some are kind of insane that I would never have gotten to do.
Right. Probably having to say, oh, I see. I thought you were going to say because of this other job, you were having to say no to some really neat
I was, for sure. I found a balance for about 3 years of doing both, whether it was taking early morning flights to get somewhere so that I could be online and write, or take super late night flights. But so I was doing both. And then in 2024, I moved back to Virginia. So I moved to Charlottesville. I knew I wanted to come back to Virginia and be closer to my parents. My sister was having a baby, and I knew I wanted to be close by. So I moved and was still working for Big Human for a while. And 2024 work really started, like freelance work started to become more and more part of my life. And there was definitely a balance some days, and some days it was beginning to be not quite a balance anymore. And I was able to make it work. I was waking up at 4 or 5 a.m. to write, and then working a 10 to 6 job.
Goodness,
and then working, from 7 to 11 or midnight afterward. Not 5 days a week, but
and you're like,
several days.
This is not sustainable.
Right. And it was definitely becoming not sustainable. I think that's the key phrase there. And it wasn't until I went down to like a health retreat, sort of like a health retreat ranch in a tiny town in Gay, Georgia. It's called Corcus. It's new. It opened the end of last year.
Okay, well, sounds amazing.
Oh, it's amazing. I highly recommend. And one of their owners, Kiara, she's like kind of a holistic health practitioner.
Yeah.
And she and I were talking about how I was feeling. And I was like, my mental and my physical health aren't great. And we started talking about the importance of sleep. I don't think I had fully realized how like the lack of sleep I was getting, and how that was impacting my physical and mental health.
It will mess with you.
I knew that. I was like, oh, okay, I have to make a decision. I have to either stop freelance writing or be brave enough to do full-time freelance writing. And so I also, the whole time was realizing that I wasn't – part of the reason why I wasn't completely content and happy in my career was because I had feet in both buckets, and I wasn't able to be 100% or 110% in either one, which just wasn't very satisfying. And so beginning of 2025, I booked a press trip in that March of that year, and it was going to be a 10-day group press trip, which I would have never said yes to before, because that was the type of trip that works when you're working full time.
Yeah.
And so I knew that there would kind of be that cutoff time. And so I put in my notice.
Yeah.
And in March 2025, I went full-time freelance. And it was nice because as much work as I put in doing both the years prior, it had built sort of I built the connections and the contacts and the workload so that I was able to seamlessly transition without being like, where's the next paycheck coming from? Because having both was really amazing, and it was a great financial situation to be in.
Guys, I'm sure that was hard to give up too.
Yeah, I definitely shop less now, but it was not worth it. And I think as you get older, I look back and in New York and working Adelaide Daily, I was working around the clock. And I look back and I was doing that for free for them. I was working nights and weekends because I cared so much. And as you get older, I'm like, oh, I don't need to do that. And that isn't sustainable for like a happy life.
Well,
so
we are so glad that you landed where you are because you write beautifully.
I appreciate that.
So you talked a little bit about kind of how the media landscape has changed. You were specifically mentioning on the content side, algorithms and whatnot. Which is so hard to keep up with. And, I on the PR side, even remember a time when regional papers in the States had travel writers, which just does not exist anymore, like how else do you see that it has shifted? And I almost hate to even ask this, but I feel like you can't have a conversation these days without bringing up AI.
Yeah.
How has that impacted what you do, if at all?
I think the changes are always based on how and where we as a culture consume content. Mm-hmm. And so like I mentioned before in, 2013, 2014, we were all consuming and sharing content on Facebook. And I look back, none of us knew a thing about SEO. We were writing 100, 200 word articles that were not, optimized for search. We didn't know what keywords were.
Right.
And as, that became more and more important, 2015 on as a traffic source, we've all been so focused on that. And that we're seeing is becoming a little less important as people are getting their content from the AI generated summaries in search engines like Google.
Yeah.
And so click through is not as high. And so that is the biggest change. And so understanding where people are getting their content now, not video content, because I am not in that world,
right?
But specifically written content. And so from what I have heard with talking to editors, because I'm not privy to the analytics of a publication as a freelancer.
Okay.
But where they're seeing traffic coming from is from things like Google Discover and Apple News.
Okay.
And so the kind of work that I've been getting in 2023 and 2024, a lot of it was still catered to search. So I was writing the assignments that were coming in were things like the best times to visit Dallas or the best things to do in Vienna. And those were phrases and topics that people were specifically searching in Google. And so a lot of that has shifted. But I think one thing that has remained the same over the past 2 to 3 years is publications are really focusing on content that is expert backed. So whether it's the writer is specifically from there, they're known to write about this place, or, which is what I do a lot of, is interviewing local experts within a destination and including them in the piece, because that is such a key factor that not only, it was originally helpful because Google it used to prioritize content that had the acronym is EAT, so expertise, authenticity, transparency, I forget. And so having experts within your content was part of that to show your expertise within the matter. And now it's a nice differentiator between journalist, writer written content and AI written content.
This is super encouraging as a consumer because there's a lot to wade through these days. And so hearing that is a major focus for editors is great.
It's nice. But then again, if you circle back, it's still a business.
Yeah.
And the editors who I write for are employees of larger businesses and companies. And so
they're those clicks.
Yeah, they're doing what they can in order to keep the publications afloat. So I'm definitely curious how that will change in the future.
Right.
But all I know is right now I'm still getting assignments and pitches are still getting accepted, which I'm super grateful for. So I know I'm not sure where it's going to go.
Right.
But
it's that funny gray area
and I'm
right
hopeful
now.
that there's still value placed in publications that are noteworthy and have built a brand that is trusted. So places like Travel and Leisure or Southern Living, Town and Country, people still appreciate the content that they are putting out because they know that there is journalistic integrity that is put into the pieces.
Yes.
And so I'm hoping that will continue to be a channel that people engage with. I think we're also seeing sort of a back to print-esque atmosphere within writing and publications because there is so much content online.
I do love that.
I know.
Does that make me sound old?
No, they're beautiful. I love a magazine. Because there's so much content on the internet, I think we're all going to inherently crave a more curated type of content and publication.
Yeah.
So we'll see where that goes. But AI, it's scary. I think it's a totally scary thing in so many ways. And I know it is helpful in so many ways. I use it personally for a light fact check on my own work. I don't rely on that.
Nice, right.
Or, using it for synonyms and different ways to say things to help make me a better writer. So we'll see.
Oh, Lord, it's everywhere. So, you mentioned pitches getting accepted and assignments being assigned to you. What is the balance there? Are you receiving a lot of assignments? Are you constantly pitching? Is there a percentage?
Yes, I would say, it changes on a daily, weekly, monthly basis.
Yeah.
And I think that's the frustrating and the exciting part about being a freelancer is you don't know if like a week is going to be particularly busy or not. I would say 75% of my work right now are assignments.
Okay.
And I think that is a little rare. It stems, I think, from the fact that, again, I look back to my very first job and being a clean, solid writer.
You're
and I think
clearly very good at what you do.
Important. Thank you for editors who, they're not being paid massively. So I try to keep in mind that I want to make their job as easy as possible because they're more likely to want to work with me or think of me when an assignment comes up. And so I definitely, 75% assigned right now. 25% I am pitching, and it's either based on, some recent travel that I've done or something that I see is working, or I see a particular destination that hasn't been highlighted yet. And I personally, I write about a ton of things when people ask me, like, what is your niche? What is kind of the bucket that your content falls into? My typical answer is either it's about the South or out West. I spent a lot of time in Wyoming, which is I've fallen in love with the past few years.
You had a lot on Jackson Hole and some of the surrounding areas, right? Yeah.
So I write about Jackson Hole a lot. I have a piece in Town and Country coming out soon.
Nice.
On that. And so I do focus on that. And I know that I have built a space where editors know to come to me for that. There was a Condé Nast Traveler had a 50 desserts in 50 states package that came out, and they knew that I was super familiar with Wyoming, so came to me and asked me to write the piece for that state, which was incredible.
Awesome.
And what I've loved the most, I think, about freelance travel writing is just the immediate gratification that you do get. There's a lot of no's, and I try not to take those personally, but there is a sense of, okay, what I did worked, or the editor was happy with me, or when they say yes to something, it's amazing. And I love that moment when it happens.
Well, maybe that's a good kind of like case study to pick apart a little bit with the Jackson Hole stuff and the Wyoming stuff. Have you been there multiple times? Did you go on like one particular press trip that was organized by a PR, or was it a personal thing? Just because you clearly are passionate about it and you've gotten so many stories out of it, I have had a family connection to there for decades, but we had never gone out there. It was kind of like a third cousin of my dad had a ranch there. So I'd been familiar with it. And then in 2022, this has kind of happened pretty frequently with travel. I just get an itch that I need to go somewhere. And that was one. And so I try to do at least one trip a year with my dad. And I knew that he would enjoy going. So my dad and I went out there. I reached out to a hotel and stayed out there, and we had a great time. And I stayed a bit longer than my dad did. And I was just kind of like, oh, this feels like a soul place. It's somewhere that I connect with, and I had fun. And it was in October, which is the best time to be out there. It's after the huge wave of summer and the tourism that comes along with the two national parks there, Grand Teton and Yellowstone. And I just had the best time. And I went back for ski season the next January. Yeah. Again, had so much fun, brought one of my friends with me. Nice. And then continued to go back. And I thought about moving there, and I went and lived, quote, out there the following October and November. And so for October, I was there for about 10 days. Yeah. Again, it was the following year, so 2023. Loved it. Went back in November for about 2 weeks, which was the dead season. And I realized, I was like, okay, this is what I need to expect. Virginia won.
So, and it's very far from family, and all my family is still in Virginia. Yeah.
Well, it's nice to have those spots where they can still kind of, you're still able to romanticize it a little bit and just enjoy it as a vacation.
It's still travel, and I've gone back. I've been out there, I think like 10 times now, all probably longer than a week. And it feels like home, but still it's travel and new. Yeah, and it's what's nice about a destination like Jackson Hole. I mean, I see when I do get messages when people are frustrated that I continue to cover it, especially people who live out there. I understand that. But from the tourism side,
oh, come on.
Yeah, there are a lot of new things happening. There are new hotels. Yeah, I recently stayed at. There's one called Hotel Yellowstone, which opened. It's next to the
you read about
Amangani, which is Yamagani is going through a massive renovation, but Hotel Yellowstone is brand new. It's the only adults only hotel in Jackson Hole. And so continuing to go out there and experience new places has been super fun.
Oh, I love that. There's no place like Yellowstone. No. My sister lived out there for a year, so I had the benefit of going to visit. So I'm curious, what are you seeing trending these days as far as travel goes? You mentioned like a new adults only property. In my previous job, we actually worked with a B&B here in Virginia that was adults only and dog friendly. And there's clearly a market for that. And then I love a good buzzword. Yeah. We got bleisure. We got regenerative travel, which I always, I see a lot about sustainable travel, but then I guess regenerative is kind of taking that a step further, and where people are wanting to actually do something when they travel that contributes to the sustainability of that, whether it's part of their expenses going to an organization or something like that. And then town sizing, which is not something I had heard of before. And this actually makes me think of you, Lydia, because it's all about like small town travel and kind of getting away from these more busier destinations and more touristy destinations. And that's one thing I personally just love about being in Virginia is I feel like we have so many fun spots like that.
Yeah, I think that I haven't heard of the word town sizing, but it definitely resonates with the kind of pieces that my editors continue to assign or say yes to. So I'm never going to pitch a story on New York City or Paris. These are places that people know, and there's so much content out there.
Right.
But I'm more interested in pitching a small town in Western North Carolina that has, since Hurricane Helene last year, they are back in the tourism space and they are looking to get more people down there. And so I do what I can to focus on those smaller and lesser known towns, not just because they say yes or not just because they resonate with my editors and the assignments come in, but I do feel like it's a good way to give back in some way and make sure that smaller communities are still being highlighted through larger publications.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's see. On the flip side, are you seeing any specific trends in destination marketing or the way hotels are talking about themselves and selling themselves? I always, in my Richmond tourism days, we talked about craft beer a lot. And there was a while there where every destination under the sun was claiming to be the beer destination. I will die on the hill that Richmond is the beer destination. But you know how trends kind of come and go.
So I'm thinking about it from what I see in my inbox. And so for people who aren't familiar with like a travel writer or journalist inbox, it's pretty packed with pitches from PR and PR for like hotels and destinations and things like that. I'd say I get a lot of dupes. So like this is a dupe for X, Y, and Z popular destinations, which does sort of relate back to that town sizing trend of, hey, this national park or this state park is a dupe for this more popular national park. So, but sometimes, those do continue to resonate without maybe saying the word dupe. I think a lot of those buzzwords can become a little bit, what's a good word for that? Overdone.
Yes.
And I would try not to pitch something to an editor with those buzzwords because it feels not super organic and it feels a little
like you're
overdone.
Grasping.
So I think that's a big one. I think Western cowboy cowgirl culture, because that has been such an interesting topic, especially because of the show Yellowstone, things like that. The Vogue October cover just featured Gigi Hadid and Kendall Jenner out in Jackson Hole on a ranch that I had been to before.
Oh, you're kidding.
And that continues to be a trend. And I have written about that plenty. And I continue to see articles being written. But I think we're almost at a point at least from my perspective of pitching, where it feels like we're at a plateau.
Yeah,
How
yeah.
much more can you talk about
Okay.
food ranch experiences and the cowboy experience in
Yeah,
Yellowstone and things like that? But I'm seeing a lot of people responding to other moments in pop culture, whether it's the Amazon Prime show, The Summer I Turned Pretty, and PR
I have
trying
teenage girls, Lydia.
You don't have to be a teenage girl like it. You can be 33. And, you know, I get a lot of the pitches from PR about that. But personally, I write articles that have a longer leg and are more evergreen. So I'm not always going to be the one to say, yes, that pitch is perfect for me.
Right.
I'm going to pitch that from a more like newsy angle, because the publications I write for do tend to be not as focused on the news cycle.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, all of that said, what is your relationship to the PR industry, PR people? And I know I'm sure your inbox is just like, does it just go click, 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 click all the time? They're just coming in.
I'm very anal in the fact that I like to have it on 0.
Yeah.
And so I wake up.
Gosh, that's impressive.
And I wake up, I delete. I'm deleting during the day. It's helped since I have removed one inbox from my then full-time job.
Right.
Down to a couple different emails. It has been very, very, very helpful. But from the PR side, so the most positive relationships I have are with PR people who see the relationship between writers and editors and PR as something that should be curated and built, and it's not just an exchange.
Right.
And in fact, one of the biggest red flags that I have is if a PR person emails me about a trip, it's a press invite, it's a destination, and they use the words, "We'd love to have you in exchange for coverage." And I see that all the time. I would say multiple times a day. And
interesting.
When I do have the time, I'll be like, hey, that is not what freelancers do. If you want,
that gives me the shakes.
Yeah. There are some pretty interesting ones.
Yeah.
I'm a freelancer. I have no control. I could pitch something. It could be accepted. It could never go live.
Sure.
Like, I have no control over that. But what I can do is go to a destination and do my due diligence and research and find multiple story angles that could work. But again, it's never guaranteed. And I found it's interesting because the PR people, a lot of the pressure that they're getting comes from their clients. And so that pressure trickles down to me. But then that creates a relationship where that is just a big, big, big red flag for me. And I'm going to say no to working with you. But I have a lot of great relationships with PR people like you and Hodges. And there are a lot of PR companies who approach it, and they've not only have built a relationship with me in the past, but they continue to check in, see what I'm working on, pitch something specifically because they know that I'm interested in that. Those are the pitches that I'm more likely to respond to versus the mass emails that I'm like, ooh, I know this was sent to about 20 different people.
Yeah.
Same thing for press trips. And so there are multiple different kinds of press trip invites for people who aren't familiar. So there are ones that I know are specifically tailored to me. It's an individual one. They specifically want to bring me to this property. I consider those way more often than ones that I'll get the invite and it says, hey, this is a very small press trip. We need you to say yes by this date because I know I'm just one of a few, which makes sense. I have heard from PR that it's getting harder and harder to fill press trips. So I get the pressure that is coming from the clients for them to make that trip happen. But I also have gotten invites where they're telling me, hey, the trip leaves next week and we have one spot left. And from an ego perspective, I find that quite offensive. I'm like, okay, great. So I know I was not your first choice. And so as a travel writer who's been in this space for a while, and I have great relationships with other travel writers who are in the same position, and we all have developed your kind of radar of what's going to be a good press trip, what makes sense.
Right.
And I do think one of there are two most common misconceptions about press trips is that they are incredibly glamorous. And at times they are. You know, I've been to a million different 5-star hotels, and they are amazing. They're hotels and experiences that I would never get to see or do if it wasn't for this job, just from a monetary point of view. But then again, I think what people, both PR and people in the outside world, don't see is that writers are waking up at 4 a.m. on a press trip in order to continue to work. Right. I'm not being paid for those days that I'm on the road. I'm being paid for what I actually produce. And that's what I try to communicate to PR when I'm invited. I rarely do a group trip because I found that those are definitely harder to fit in the work. I'm typically writing between 2 and 3 articles a day.
Do you find that those itineraries tend to be just packed?
It's packed. Yeah. I had mentioned that 10-day trip that I had said yes to in March 2025, which was to Switzerland, which was an amazing trip. My first time in Europe skiing, incredible. But I was waking up early and staying up late for 10 days writing, and I was so exhausted by the end. But that one was worth it. But there are some that I'm just kind of like, that took it out of me. And then, so I think that's the like glamorous side of it, is the first misconception. And the second is, especially if PR people are listening to the podcast, it's just the financial side of things. And what a lot of people assume is that the publication is going to reimburse you for what you as a writer have been paid for. And I have found it frustrating because I think understanding that when I am traveling somewhere, yes, the hotel is usually paid for. Some meals are paid for, but there's the other financial part of it. I am getting paid between $200, $500 for an article. And if you think about my parking at the airport can be, $50 to $75. And when I get there, if I'm paying for lunch, I get if I have to do that, but $30 really takes it out of the final bill. And so that is definitely, it's frustrating because I don't want to come across as ungrateful. And I'm always super grateful for the experiences that I have been offered and given. But at the same time, I'm a business. I think it goes back to that business mindset that I developed by working for, startups for a small fashion company, is that there's always a bottom line. And in order to be a successful journalist, I have to make money. And that is really hard with press trips and trying to communicate that without sounding ungrateful, because I think there are people who do take advantage of it. But I'm not going to sit there and order 10 bottles of wine, but I do want to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner and try to have a normal schedule without being concerned that I'm not going to make any money or I'll lose money from a story that I'm going to
I have definitely heard this. It's so understandable. It's so important. It's so important for PR people to understand. And I have definitely been in the position before on this side where I am then kind of advocating to whoever I am answering to, like, look, we have to factor in all of the big picture, not just once they've landed in a destination.
And it's also the responsibility of the journalist to ask questions before. My mom has gotten frustrated with me on this sometimes because she was like, you need to send your list, a set list of questions when you say yes to a trip. Like, is this covered? Is this covered? Is this covered? Sometimes I do. Sometimes I don't. I was just on a trip in Alaska and most of it was covered, but something with the rules for that particular destination, they couldn't cover meals. And I just needed to eat the cost because I didn't ask beforehand. And luckily I had pitched 3 articles beforehand, which also important for PR to know. Most pieces are pitched after a trip. This is just a different scenario. So I know that I did make money from the trip. But again, I was there for about 6 days. And so I wasn't, because I was doing things during the trip, I wasn't able to write as much as I typically do at home. So it's just, it's such a balance. I have had a really travel press trip heavy summer. Most of the trips are individual trips, but I'm kind of, it's that balance that I've started to get away from, which I had found when I had gone full-time freelance in March. So I decided to take October completely off, which was a nice, I haven't done that in years. And I just needed to give myself hard and fast rules. So have said no to a bunch of trips in October. Some I was pretty bummed about, but I have to tell myself, travel will hopefully always be there.
Yeah, exactly.
And so just knowing that I'm saying, actually I was at another health focused retreat, but this time in Hawaii. And I was talking to the guides about that. I was really focused on like mindset and sleep and balance. And they told me to position it as not saying no to trips, but saying yes to being home and saying yes to my health and yes to balance.
Yeah.
And so trying to focus on that for October.
What a great perspective. And also I look at it, I mean, you said it will likely always be there.
Hopefully.
You know, can call them up in the spring and go, you know what? Now I'm ready. So just kind of for fun. Well, I didn't realize, Lydia, you had a moment at Vogue, right? You were a copy editor.
I was a copy editor.
Okay.
I did. So that would have been 2015, 2016.
Okay.
And luckily it was, through one of my connections, like a former boss. He had worked at Condé Nast. So he got a foot in the door for me with a recruiter.
Yeah.
And I remember I went to Zara and I got a new outfit, which I look back on, I was like, that probably was not the vibe.
Doesn't love Zara.
And I remember I told my work then I was going for an interview for copy editor position at Vogue, or I told them that I had a doctor's appointment. So I went down there, and it's just such one of those like visual moments that sticks with you. And I remember looking up at the One World Trade Center, and I was like waiting to go in for my interview, and I walked in. And they didn't even let me in. They let me up to the floor, but the person there didn't bring me actually in the office. It was just an interview in the hall, which is, I remember being like, they really don't want me for this. But I started doing contract copy editing for them. So I did it for about 8 months. And that I remember helped me get the job at Draper James.
Okay.
My final round interview was with Reese Witherspoon on a Zoom.
Gosh, Lydia.
Which was, again, another one of those moments that you look back and you're like, oh, that was so interesting. And she had brought up the fact that I was from the South and that I had done some copy editing for Vogue. And I think those were the two final factors that helped her say yes. That was
must be fun to see it in the news with the big transition. Anna Wintour.
Oh yeah,
moving on, and then the Devil Wears Prada too, right?
That is coming out. It's a great movie. I'm very excited for the second one.
Okay. Also, just for fun. So I know you've had some travel snafus in your life. Are there any that stand out?
I've been pretty lucky. I think the classic one that I always refer back to for this question is in 2021, I was living in the UK and I decided that I needed to go to Scotland. Again, the same thing with the Jackson Hole story, that I will get just a random feeling that I need to go somewhere. And that one was Scotland. So I had arranged a road trip over Thanksgiving because that is not a thing there. So I was able to travel pretty freely. I had, 4 days off with work. And so went up to Edinburgh and I went to my first hotel, which is the Balmoral there. Stunning, beautiful hotel. It was an amazing, 3-room suite. And I was just like, wow, this is going to be the best trip ever. I'm so lucky. This feels like where I'm supposed to be. And the next few days, I went to 2 different hotels. One, Glen Eagles, which was a bucket list hotel for me. It's a very outdoorsy Land Rover Barber Jacket hotel in the countryside. And then I drove up to the Fife Arms, which is in my favorite village in all of Scotland called Braemar. I'm actually writing about that next week for Travel and Leisure. And I went there, amazing time. It's a super tiny, tiny village. And then that one morning I left and it was kind of the end of my hotel stays that had been arranged through press. And I was kind of on my own, real, legit traveling as a regular person. And I drove out to the Isle of Skye. I hadn't checked the weather, had no clue. My parents were kind of like, why didn't you look? And it didn't cross my mind to check the weather. And there was a major, major winter storm that came in.
Oh, gosh.
And I look back and I have pictures on the Isle of Skye selfies. And there's a huge storm cloud in the distance. And I had no clue.
Oh, gosh.
I was in a very tiny European car, not a 4-wheel drive car at all. And I looked and I was like, okay, the storm is coming. And I'm trying to think. I looked at what was the closest distance to my next stop where I was spending the night, which was not a hotel. It was a little cow shed on the side of a mountain that was kind of like a hostel Airbnb situation. And mind you, I had been coming from 5-star hotels. So I just assumed that when I got there, people would help me. They'd take care of my bags. It's not the case, but I looked up on maps how to get there. I took the shortest route, which is a very dangerous drive. And I looked up through the windshield, and there were a bunch of sheep running toward me on the road. And I was like, well, what are they running from? Lydia. Because I'm going right toward it. And it's so funny. I had to audibly tell myself to just like, have courage, keep going. Like there's snow coming, there's hail coming down. And I finally made it. No food though. And I was in my little cottage, and luckily I had service and was able to call my parents. And I was like, hey, I have no food. I'm stuck. It's hailing.
You poor thing.
So I was like, look back, and I had like PTSD from that trip for a while, but now I know.
Poor you, poor your parents.
They were a little disappointed, but it was all fine. I think that was just, and then I learned I did another Scottish road trip in February of this year, and it was kind of my redemption for that.
I
planned ahead.
Yeah.
I knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
I had a bigger car this time, and I made sure to not drive through. I think that 21 storm had been like the biggest snowstorm that Scotland had seen in a very long time.
Oh my goodness.
But besides that, classic story. I mean, there are so many airport delays, as we saw earlier this year. But
I went to the wrong airport once, Lydia. Let's see. I lived right behind Reagan in Washington, and went to Dulles because it was a classic not paying attention to my mother when she was talking to me situation. Missed a flight to Mexico. So that was a whole thing. But as I said, I have 2 teen girls, and for spring break, we went to Boston and had a blast. But they're old enough now where we have talked about, part of travel is the snafus. Yeah. Like we do the best we can to plan, and things happen, and we just pivot and we move on, and that's just part of the adventure.
Totally. And I think there's a massive privilege that I have when I'm traveling. I know that, I have access to a cell phone. I have family that I can call if something happens. I have credit card that if something happens, God forbid, like I can just put it on that. Yeah. I think that's a privilege that I try not to take for granted, because that does make travel a little less stressful.
Yes.
That's a factor. Because I remember, when I was studying abroad in college, I didn't have a smartphone. I didn't have a credit card that was mine. And so now I'm like, I have my phone will get me where I need to be. It will, if a plane gets canceled, I can get on the Delta app and talk to the representative and find a new one. So I try not to stress too much, because like you said, there's things that happen. You have no control.
You just never know.
You just kind of have to breathe through it, be prepared. I always carry snacks just in case.
Oh God, yes.
You never know.
And so important.
Try not to schedule things the day after that you're traveling, because you never know when things will get canceled.
That is it. Yep. Good point.
Try to do that.
Well, Lydia, this is so much fun. I could talk about travel all day. So how can our listeners follow you, and where can they find your work? I know the answers to this, but I will let you.
So most of my work is online, writing for Travel and Leisure, Southern Living, Town and Country, Condé Nast. I also do some branded content work that you might not realize is me, is like for Men's Journal or Afar. So mostly on those publications. I'm on Instagram, Lydia Mansel. I don't post a lot of my work there.
Your Instagram is really pretty, Lydia. It's like, I think your Instagram, it just kind of harkens back. It's like, to me, what Instagram is supposed to be.
It's like, beautiful, like fun little creative project.
But it's aspirational. You're posting places you've been.
I'm not showing the lowlights. It's all highlights. I was joking with my friends the summer that I lived abroad. I was going through a big emotional change. I was, crying a lot. And I was like, can you imagine if that's what I was posting every day? No one sees the negative parts of travel or life there. But on Instagram, for sure, I probably share about 10% of my work there. I try not to inundate people, but I think Instagram specifically for a travel writer and those in the travel space is just such a good way to connect with fellow writers, with readers, with editors, with PR people. I use it as a source to find destinations and inspiration for pitching.
Yeah.
Sometimes, reaching out when I need first person sources, I will go to Instagram if I may have saved something from there that I know there's someone or someplace that I can reach out to. I think it also helps put a face to a name. Going back to, the hundreds of emails that I get in an inbox, I find myself more likely to respond to an invite or a PR person because I try to respond to most of them, but a lot of times I can't.
Yeah.
I just don't have the bandwidth to, but I'm more likely to respond to the ones that PR people I've connected with on Instagram. Like I see their content. They are more than just a name in an inbox for me.
Yeah.
So I think that is important for PR just to know. I think it helps humanize both sides a little bit.
Sure.
And then I also, I like the rest of the world, have a Substack. In 2020, I had started a packing website that was the strategy was centered around affiliate marketing and search. And so the goal was when people were searching things like what to pack in Charleston, they were finding my website and they were coming in with intent to buy.
Right.
And affiliate marketing is, if someone buys something through a link that you have, there's a chance that, you get a percentage of that purchase. Right. And so that was the strategy there. And so I kind of kept that going for a while, but I found that I just didn't have the time to run a website and keep content fresh for a whole website. But I kept it there and people were continuing to sign up for a newsletter via that website. Yeah. So the end of last year, beginning of this year, I realized that I should just transition it to Substack because that's where everyone is. And that has been super effective. So twice a month, I will write a Substack, and it's usually based around recent travels. I recently did a what to pack for, where was I recently? The Caribbean. I have a what to pack for Alaska, which was my last trip, coming out next week. And so I
like it because it's so incredibly practical.
Thank you. I try. And that's also where I will highlight some of my work as well. I try to connect it back to the publications that I'm writing for. I have 3 pieces on Alaska coming out in Travel and Leisure. So if they're out by next week, I'll include a link there.
Yeah.
Which I found that it's kind of one more trend that people are seeing is that we're kind of in the writing space. People are trying to carve out their own personality and niche as an independent media person. That's not necessarily what I'm trying to do, but I have found it's been helpful that editors, there's some commerce editors at different publications, and they know that I do have a packing website, and so they're like, great, we need a packing expert to do these pieces, and so I will get work from there. And so it's all interconnected in some way. And I think this whole packing website and brand, it's called Just Pack. So you can find the Substack at justpack.substack.com. And I think this was such a good lesson for me because I started it and I was super excited. And over the years, I was just kind of like, oh, this is so annoying. I don't have time to do it because it's not making, as much money as my side job as a freelancer. So, but then I would get disappointed in myself because I wasn't putting in as much effort as I should have been or thought I should have been.
Yeah.
But this was the learning from that was you can have a side project and it can transition into something that works both for you and an audience.
Yeah.
And so that's been exciting. There are about 6,100 subscribers now, which is wonderful. And so hoping to continue to grow that.
Oh, I love that. Well, okay. So we will look forward to your coverage of Alaska. To close, where are you headed next?
I am going to Montana next week. I'm writing. One of my favorite parts about being a travel writer is that I can usually bring a friend or a family member along for the ride. And for the past 4 years, I've been so privileged to bring some of my closest friends on fun trips. I'm bringing
Yeah.
one of my college friends out to Montana. We're doing a whole ranch experience.
Yes, I love this.
I love horseback riding. I love fly fishing. So we're going to do that.
Okay.
And then afterward, I'm going to a new state. So I'm going to South Dakota.
Okay.
There is a annual bison roundup, and I love all things bison out west.
Oh my gosh.
Obviously.
What a hoot.
So I'm doing that. And then I am going to Vail, Colorado.
Nice.
I love a mountain town, and I love a mountain town in the fall.
Yeah.
And the off season. And so I'm going to do that.
Okay.
And then I'm off for a whole month, and then I'm going on my very first safari. I'm going to Tanzania.
Nice.
And that is the very kind of the golden goose for travel writers. I've finally got a few different invites for those, because they're usually larger invites as far as, it's a really big deal to fly that far. And I finally got one that I could say yes to.
Okay, this is going to be a good Substack too. Like, yes. I'm going to look forward to the packing for Tanzania.
Oh, I'm ready for the outfits. I am very prepared.
Well, I am so excited for you.
Thank you.
Many fun things ahead, and we can all look forward to the fun things you write about these places.
So
thank you so much, Lydia. Yeah, of course.
Thanks for listening to the Teaming Up podcast. Teaming Up is brought to you by the Hodges Partnership, a public relations agency that does PR differently. We bring clients thoughtful, strategic communications through earned, owned, and paid media. The Teaming Up podcast is a Happy Committee production. Episodes are released monthly, so subscribe on your favorite podcast service so you never miss an episode.